Transcendental Ennui, a original story by Lance Dixon, which is me. Copyright 2015, Lance Dixon. In an immeasurable universe, what is excess? With no center, where is the middle ground? When the light gets to you, it's millennia old, telling tales of things you cannot see. The low, clear female voice clearly sang with an unplaceable accent. The crowd sang along with the chorus. Do as you will, spill it, take her, write it, spree. Oh yes, darkness, darkness, darkness be. Spree, spree, oh fly, be free. Then the electric bagpipes played across the earth-vibrating conjugal beat. I sat up and smirked at the artificial dawn of the party lights from my window. So much for country living. What's worse than bagpipes? Electric bagpipes. I said to no one and swore at myself. Papers scattered across my bed, a slush pile of reading barely touched. My work, oh, I felt too good to even glance at my desk. My depression. That nasty little man in my head spoke softly. You start, but you never finish. Shut up, I said back. Self-talk, they call it. It's supposed to help. My cup of herbal tea sat on top of the most unconventional invitation to the party next door on my nightstand. Using it as a coaster was a poor attempt at physical humor. The nightgown-wearing teddy bear on the teabag tab did a jig to the far-off drums. The long, cold tea rippled in standing waves. I rubbed my eyes, shook my head, then shook it in rhythm to the drums. Then swore into my breath. Any distraction would do. I sighed again. It was becoming a habit, along with smirking, and deliberately, with all the outward signs of surrender, moved the teacup off the invitation. The invitation was singular. It was a black metal triangle, somehow etched with strange series of numbers and letters, then an understandable address, my name, then a date for the beginning of the party, then simply, "Come, enjoy." I read it mockingly, and then flung it across the room. It made me jump as it stuck into the wood paneling with a strange metallic twang. Being from New Hampshire, a state whose main industry and attraction was polite indifference, I thought the invitation was an obligatory ritual, or at most a ploy to avoid a noise complaint. I had never met my neighbors, only learned their name, Loofcraft or something, recently because of the delivery trucks, quite a few large ones, that had tried to unload huge amounts of food and liquor in my driveway. One of the trucks had live fish in plastic tanks and another pigs and goats. They weren't for a petting zoo, since the smell of the various roasting meats had been wafting my way since the party began 2 days ago. I rose and looked up my balcony doors. The warped ancient glass rippled the image and made it somehow even more dreamlike. The next house over, a sister house to the one I rented for my sabbatical, was built by gentlemen farmers who made their fortune during the Civil War. Each was on its own hill, surrounded with gardens, and replete with carriage houses, guest cottages, and stables. All the buildings were for housing, for guests now it seemed, plus tents, campfires, and lights all circling around the central stage. The stage was built with scaffolding atop a converted bus in the central courtyard before the great house. I I smiled and remembered seeing the old bus crawl up the hill, grinding out black smoke, a great multicolored thing in the distance. And over my morning paper, I glanced at it close up, just for a moment. It was covered in pictures of long-haired nude women, tastefully done, satyrs, centaurs, and other such nonsense in questionable poses. Transdimensional ennui, featuring Nara Tep, was written in simple black letters over the colorful background, along with "Powered by Imagination." Apparently imagination smells like diesel, I had muttered to myself. Then I had seen her. Whew. For a moment the face of a pale woman, her eyes painted like eyes of horse, from one of the windows. Swore she had smiled at me. Funny what one remembers and when. I got cleaned up and went back to the open doors. And opened the doors. I took a deep breath. The moment sank in. The moment before a fighter fights, or a criminal steals, or a musician plays. Well, this was such a moment. But for me, a failed writer, It was a writing moment. There was story here. The still midsummer air was a blank page being written on boldly with notes of curry and cannabis and drums and the sound of the crowd. The heady melange glowed in the lights, making a nimbus around the house and the surrounds, turning into a castle in the clouds in the far-off warm darkness. It was a pleasant night. It was only just next house over. I decided to walk. The truth was, I was afraid. Baby steps seemed in order. I gingerly plucked the invitation from the wall and started walking. As I got closer, partygoers were coming and going to the house on foot from the impromptu parking in the fields across the way. Just then, Edgar Allan Poe puked on me. He was in the arms of a slight woman who was trying to help me walk. "Come now, Eddie," she said, smiled at me apologetically with strange large eyes, and shifted him as she tried to assist him. He fell again, and on a reflex I reached for him. He flailed and saved himself by gripping my lapels with unusually small but strong hands. His back arched like a cat, and he retched face down to the ground in a streaming torrent, barely missing me. Then he raised his combed over head as his lady friend, with the same strange eyes, now come to think of it, wiped his face with a cloth handkerchief. He made a face like a boy being cleaned by his mother, and snatched the hanky away, wiped his thin mustache, and then we locked eyes momentarily, as if he recognized me. He was right off the dust jacket of his collected works I kept near my desk. "Ever so sorry, my goodly sir," he said, in a mildly southern accent. At the time I had assumed he was hired for the party, or this was in fact a costume party. Eddie Poe then looked at me with those large, sad eyes from a wrinkled brow, then looked at my open collar, and with a trembling hand motioned toward my neck. He must have seen the scar, perhaps recognized me and knew of the scar? Impossible. "I too have felt the call, my friend. Oh, if bottles were as easy to avoid as bridges and ropes," he said as he smiled a sad smile of perfect tiny teeth and coughed wetly into the ruined hanky. His hands then smoothed my lapels, and then pointed to the house. "I must perambulate to my egress, sir, but do make my acquaintance of our most excellent hostess, and pass along my regards." The R in regards swelled into a roar as he started puking again. His handler smiled at me in apology as she patted his back, and as I backed away, Eddie muttered between convulsions about his sweet, constant cousin companion, and reached out and held her hand. I tipped my non-existent hat to the lady, and then made my way past several more figures of art and science. It did not strike me then that there weren't any repeats, or some were rather unsung. Why was there just one Elvis, and who would come as touring? I chalked it up to New York decadence. All the entertainment must be leaving for the night, I figured, and made it towards the pedestrian gate, which was next to the car gate, where two very large men stood, one in Roman soldier garb, and the other in some sort of video game outfit of shiny plastic-looking armor. "Invitation," a robot voice said, from what I thought was a guy in a robot suit. I produced my metal triangle, and he took it and slid it in a slot in his arm. He then rattled off my name and added the term VIP to the end. "Centurion, take this human to mistress. I will maintain this checkpoint," the big robot guy said. The Centurion pounded his chest, then saluted, and then motioned for me to follow him, with an obviously forced smile that was more like the baring of teeth. "VIP, I muttered, as I followed the broad armored back of the Roman as he bellowed, "Make way! Make way!" We made it to a second perimeter made of velvet ropes near the stage. My triangle was swiped again by a steampunk cowboy with a strange box that again rattled off my particulars. A Norseman, shirtless in a leather kilt, and his body covered in not a tattoo. The Norseman made the Roman look cosmopolitan, which historically makes sense, I suppose. He just scratched his beard and grunted as he jerked his head and turned for me to follow. So finally, I was led to the door of the bus, which was under the stage it supported. Two very tall and athletic-looking Eastern European women, twins in every way, stood in simple white dresses and light cloaks, gold circlets about their heads. "We've been expecting you," they said together like the gum commercial. "I'm flattered. You guys really go all out," I said, and smiled uncomfortably. Then her head darted out of the window. She was topless. I'm Nara. So nice you could come. I'll be right out, she said, then popped back in. Thank you, I said, far too late, and smiled some more at the twins. After a wait as long as a sentence, the bus door opened. In a little black dress and leather jacket, Nara jumped out from the bus and landed with her feet raised like a gymnast. You're here! I'm so excited! It was then I noticed the eyes of Horus markings weren't makeup, but were permanent. She then hugged me, hard. She smelled like toasted rose petals and spun sugar. The twins raised their eyebrows and looked at me and stepped forward. There was motion under the cloaks. I smiled and put up my jazz hands. Until she released me, the twins took a step back. When I saw you, when we arrived, I knew we were in the right place. Let's go find a place where we can talk, she said. I began to speak, but she put a finger to my lips. She leaned in close and whispered slowly and tenderly, It's going to be okay. I believed her. Then she spun around, making a hand motion, and the twins moved quickly to her side. I followed her, one twin in front and one twin behind. The twins didn't need to yell to part the motley crowd. It just happened. We made our way to the house and into the windowless study, and there were some stern looks and quick words as the twins were motioned to wait outside. Nara closed the embossed leather-covered door, and finally it was quiet and we were alone. That is much better, Nara said, and threw herself into one corner of a huge leather sofa. Her cowboy boots flew off her elfishly small black stocking feet, and she collapsed with a sigh. Oops, that's your thing, isn't it? Sighing, she said, no longer glib. Yeah, it seems so, I said, and sat opposite her. Have you guessed why you're here? She asked, twirling her hair and looking through me. Don't really know. I live next door, I stammered. Maybe the party was next to your house for a reason, she said slowly, and made a deliberate motion of her hands to illustrate her point, then just stared at me. Right, listen, this is amazing, but it's getting... I began, and she interrupted me. I am Naratep, minor goddess of arts. You are at my revel, amongst guests from all over space and time. We are here to help each other, and you. You are here because you have a gift, and you're not using it. To speak plainly, that offends me, she said in a strong, matter-of-fact tone. I made a big mistake of my life, and I laughed. She silently put on her boots, her face a little sad. I pleaded with her. She got up and went to leave. I got up too, and the doors opened, and the twins were staring at me, so I stopped getting closer. Naratep, minor goddess of the arts, turned to me and said, Sleep. I slept. When I woke up, I was on the leather sofa. My shoes were removed, and there was a note on my chest. Write. One word, that's all. It read in beautiful script. I have it framed on my wall in my study right now. I tried to get out. Couldn't. I slept on the couch after some amount of time in the windowless room until I was awoken by a poke in the ribs. You have not written, one of the twins asked. She was holding a long curved sword still in its scabbard, which I assumed she had poked me with. No, I said to what I assumed at the time was a crazy cosplayer. With one motion, one hand, I was in the air, nose to nose, and sock feet off the ground. I think I peed a little. I am Petra, beard taker, slayer of men and enslaver of boys. Honor your gift. This is your only warning. And with that, she threw me to the couch. So I wrote several pages, then slept. Again with the poking. I wrote. I curled up in a fetal position and whined. This lacks depth of character. You need to let go. Petra, slayer of men with a necklace of woven beards, looked at me and slowly nodded, waving the papers at me. I smacked my lips and tried. Oh, literally, for the life of me, I tried not to laugh. Petra, I began, I've been imprisoned and threatened with violence, and this doesn't help my underlying issues of depression and frankly wanting to die sometimes. I felt better saying that. Petra nodded, and then her face changed. She thought of something. Write more. We talk more after your next sleep, she said, and left. So I wrote until I was tired, then slept. I smelled a rich, peppery tobacco smoke, a Cuban cigar. I awoke naturally. A balding man sat across from me. Of course, I said, recognizing Herr Dr. Freud. So we talked, and it helped. When I had written a few chapters, Benny Franklin stopped by to help edit. And as the work progressed, I got marked up copies from authors from now, back then, even the big robot guy. Seems he found strange writings in the cells of the prisoners he was guarding. Turns out it was poetry, something he had never seen, being a cyborg soldier from the 60th century. So Nera is helping him with his superlogical mind to grasp the need for pure art. Anyway, so when after it all was coming together, I awoke, and Naratep was sitting across from me. You may go now. You must of course keep writing, she said, simply. Yes, of course, I said, and sprang up and followed her to the door. When she opened the door, the music poured in without missing a beat. It was still that same night. She grabbed my lapel, made a face, and wiped something on me, then leaned in close again. Dickens got it from me, she smiled in my ear, then spun, and Naratep, minor goddess of the arts, walked out into her revel.